why most employee recognition fails, and what actually works. Have you ever had a boss or supervisor say good job or try to give you a gift card or some company swag and it kind of felt insulting or a little bit patronizing? Well, in this video, I want to expose the real reason why even well-intentioned recognition often misses the mark and talk about the foundational things that we need to understand as leaders and as organizations if we want to get this right. Hi, I'm Chris Littlefield. I'm the founder of a company called Beyond Thank You. I've spent 20 plus years training leaders at top companies around the world, from Emirates to L'Oreal to Colgate Palmolive to, well, leaders of small nonprofits, of how to understand what really matters to our people. So why does recognition often miss the mark? Why does it sometimes feel like, are you kidding me? Is that it? Well, in order to understand that, I want to introduce you to a model that I call the gap trap that I share in my workshops or trainings. So first, I want to talk about this on a personal level, and then I want to use it to explain what we're actually talking about here. So I want you to think of your normal week, and usually it starts out and we set our to-do list and there's 100 things on our to-do list, maybe more, that we need to get done. Then we get to the end of the week and we say we get maybe, 80 things actually done. And you got 80 things done, but where does your mind go? Well, it usually goes to the gap. The gap between the result we wanted to produce and the result we actually produced. And by the way, this is how we burn ourselves out, is we only focus on the gap between what we want to produce, what we actually produced. And as leaders, the reason why we burn our people out is we always have all of our meetings are focused on talking about the gap and overcoming the gap, which I'm not saying that we should be celebrating when we don't produce the result. But when we only focus on the gap, we often burn our people out. Okay, now here comes to why recognition often misses the mark. As leaders, what we often see is the result that people produced. Maybe this is the report, maybe this is the presentation, maybe this is the department's outcomes or whatever it is, and we go, good job on that report. Good job on that report. That's it. Because many times people don't want to be recognized for the result they produced. They want to be recognized for the process, the ups and downs that led to the result. Now, back to you for a second. When you come in and you get those 80 things done, you just come in on Monday morning and you sit down and no interruptions, no last minute meetings, no changes, no kids sick or anything like that, and you just get it done. No, of course not. You come in and there's a last minute meeting and a presentation you didn't know how to get done. Then all of a sudden a change, then a person on your team calls out sick, and then all of a sudden there's a sale and you get distracted online, and then Bridgerton comes out or Stranger Things and you're distracted, you stay up too late, you don't sleep, drink too much coffee, you can't focus, you can't get things done, and then all of a sudden there's a last minute meeting. Is that what your week normally looks like? Yes, we're constantly interrupted. And here's the thing, this is what we're dealing with at work, this is what we're dealing with at home, and this is what we're dealing with in our head. That's just for you. But the reason why recognition often doesn't feel like enough, or are you kidding me, is because we are recognizing as leaders what we see, and it's what we don't see that people usually want to be recognized for. Everything that it took to be able to get that report over the line, on top of what we were dealing with in our personal lives, on top of all the changes and the additional work and having to manage our employees, our teams, our families, our headspace, our anxiety, and everything else, is what people really want to be recognized for. And the challenge with standard recognition is we're limited to what we see. And this is why, as leaders, we need to develop 3 foundational skills. Now, the first one is appreciating the person. And appreciating the person is the leaders who get this understand that it's the minutes in the middle that make the biggest difference. Now, what do I mean by the minutes in the middle? It's those 2 minutes in the beginning of our meeting where we check in with our people and we ask about their weekend and about what they're working on and their projects. It's asking people about some of the challenges they're facing and how they're doing and some of the things that they're dealing with that allow us to understand the person, what matters to them, and what it takes for them to do their job. And it's paying attention in those small moments, it's asking those questions that we actually get the information we need to do that. And it's the leaders who don't take the time to ask those questions, to learn about what's going on in people's lives, to have those regular one-on-ones, that don't have the data to be able to understand what it takes for their people to do what they do. And then when they go to recognize them and go, oh, I should do this recognition thing, and then hand out a gift card, give some points in the system, give some company swag, then it feels like, are you kidding me? Is that it? Now, the second skill that is equally or even more important, but it depends on the first one, is learning how to acknowledge the circumstances. Now, in order to acknowledge the circumstances, then we need to understand the circumstances in which people are working in. Now, what do I mean by that? Hey, thanks for coming in. I know your kid is sick right now. Or thanks for staying late to be able to get this done. I know that there's an impact on your family and you having to do that. Or for being on the road and not being able to go to that concert. Or I know you're also in school at the same time and you still got this done. It doesn't mean that people aren't going to do the work, because they're paid to do that work. But when we can acknowledge the circumstances of the conditions they're working in, like being down staff or people being out, or maybe we made a last minute change or the company had a policy change, and then all of a sudden that task that should have taken 10, 20 minutes, if they're down 5 staff, they have to do it all on their own. But we can't understand that unless we understand what's going on in the world, that we're paying attention to the impact of things in their personal life on them, our actions and behaviors on them, and impacts of the things that are going on in the world around them, like elections, politics, weather, and everything else that has an impact on them. And we really saw that during the pandemic, and we were aware of it then, but now we tend to kind of forgotten that. Now, if we understand the person and we've done the work to understand what's going on in their life, when we've learned to acknowledge circumstances by being able to see it and develop what I call that impact awareness, then the third skill is recognizing effort and progress, which we can only do well if we've done the first two. Now, here's the thing. People don't want to be recognized for the result. They want to be recognized for the ups and downs that led to the result. Everything it took to be able to do this on top of this while dealing with this at the same time. Now, standard recognition, well, if we learned that when we're appreciating the person, acknowledging the circumstances, then we're able to say, hey, thank you for doing that on top of everything you're doing within your personal life. Hey, thank you for doing that when I know you're down staff, or you had to let somebody go last week, or you had to also do that other project. You can do that if you've had regular meetings. But if you haven't had regular meetings, then you won't know about this. And so when you hand out that gift card, when you try to give out that little trophy, right, then it's going to feel insulting because you don't really understand. So this is where we want to learn something that I teach in my programs, and I've written about this in Harvard Business Review, is reflective recognition, which is an inquiry-based approach to recognition. So when we get here and we see that report, instead of saying good job, we then ask, well, what did it take to do that? What does it take to do your job that I don't see? And it's all of this. And someone go, I don't know, hard work. And then we need to positively probe and ask questions. Because as a mentor of mine said, Mark Goldstein, it's less important what we say to others than what we empower others to say to us. Hey, what did it take to do that? How were you able to do that? How were you able to navigate around that? And here's the best part as a leader. In asking these questions and digging in to understand this, both for the individuals on our team and for our teams, many times, one, we have people feel valued and recognized for the work they're actually doing and what it takes to do it. But also, we're discovering the key insights, the key skills, attitudes, and behaviors that oftentimes unlock the performance of our team and help us overcome the gap in the future. So if we want to get recognition right, if we don't want it to leave people feeling like, are you kidding me? If we don't want to spend all our money on the stuff and the gift cards that oftentimes don't make a difference, then we need to learn the 3 foundational skills that are most critical to do that. Appreciating the person, acknowledging the circumstances, and recognizing effort and progress. Now, if you want some tools to help you be able to do that, go to beyondthankyou.com, scroll down to the bottom of my page, and you'll find a bunch of questions and things to nurture culture appreciation, and even a 10-question assessment to see how you're doing as a leader about building and maintaining the relationships that have people feel valued. And if you want to help your leaders get it and then give them the tools to be able to do it, then reach out to me at beyondthankyou.com. And together, let's build cultures where people feel valued every day. Take care.